Hello and welcome to Intuitive Psychology, the podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sarah Gregg, and I'm joined by my friend and co-founder, Jill Ritchie.
Hello, everyone.
It is great to be back with this short mini series. We get so many questions from people who want to train to become a coach. Either they're new to coaching, they're curious about coaching, or they're an existing coach that really wants to evolve into that next step and iteration of their journey. And although we have different podcast episodes that speak to this, we wanted to give all of the resources and information together in a beautiful, curated playlist that really speaks to you and what you're going through. Throughout this little podcast mini series, you won't just be hearing from us. We're going to be bringing on people who have experienced exactly what you are potentially thinking about going through, becoming a coach, stepping into the profession, and really doing something that you love. And in this episode, we start at the very beginning, which is when the old ways just don't feel right.
Yeah, I feel that because, you know, we're in our second season of this podcast, and we can certainly have episodes when we're talking about specific things, but I think everyone comes to this journey of potential coaching at a different stage in their life. And so this mini series is really for you if you are at that space of, okay, what does it take to become a coach? How do I make the change? How do I step out of the familiar? How do I recognise any friction that I'm holding within myself, and what do I do with that? And I think it's really important for us to talk about our journey of becoming a coach, when the old way stops feeling, you know, maybe the way you think it should. And that's how it started for me. I know that's how it started for you, but what I really want for so many people is not to take as long as probably I took. I think people will say, oh, you were pretty quick and successful in your coaching. What I'm talking about is the part before that, where I knew things weren't quite right in the job that I was in and the way that I was living and the way that I was going about my business before I got to that almost kind of that rock bottom-ish space of going, right, I cannot do this anymore. I want people to recognise the nudges before it gets to a point where you're on your knees and then you're like, okay, now I can give myself permission. Now I can give myself permission to make that change. You know, it doesn't need to be I'm on my knees moment, which I think a lot of people get to before they make the change, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly, in both our cases, that was the position that we got to. And I think if you can speed that up or just navigate around, because I think it's always speaking to you, that profession. And there is fear. Like, let's kind of like, before we dive into our own personal stories, let's just touch on the fears that we had. And perhaps you'll resonate when you're listening to this, and you'll also kind of share it. Whenever I looked at other people coaching in the online space, I was really apprehensive and skeptical about it. Like, I looked at people and thought, can you really make money from this? Is it just a big network pyramid scheme? Like, is everyone just out there, but really they're struggling in the background? Like, I was so cynical of it, but that was my own bias. Like, that was my own stuff that was coming to the surface, because I didn't come from a background where people did that. Like, a big part of me really didn't believe that you got to have it all. It felt like an impossible dream that someone was selling you, that you got to earn money and do what you love. And, you know, you were traveling and you were doing all of these different things. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. Or like, it's different for them because they're in their 20s, or they're not like me and I've got like a serious job. I was so deeply cynical of this space as a profession, which is ironic because I'd worked in coaching as a profession for most of my life in like different forms and iterations, from like business coach at a big university. I used to work for a large education and training company, and I managed, you know, a team of job coaches across multiple sites. So I knew the profession like worked, but I had this big block around self-employment, running your own business, and like, was it possible?
Yeah. I want to just talk to that because it would be, I have to mention, I think there is some things that we should be quite cynical about in the space.
Agreed.
Sarah. We've talked about this before in previous episodes, but keeping it into this mini series, there is a lot of noise out there. There is a lot of people, and you have a right to be skeptical, because there is a lot of people selling this dream, and it's not real. A lot of people aren't making the money that they say they are, and a lot of it does feel like a lot of noise, and and so real powerful coaching can get lost in that space. So I think definitely have your wits about you and do your research. Make sure that if you are looking to move into that space, that you do your research, you do your homework, you ask for, testimonials, you maybe speak to people that have trained as a coach with that professional organisation that you're considering training. For me with it, like I have managed and coached people all through my working life. I always just thought coaching was like just something that you did at work.
Yeah.
Again, I remember a friend saying to me, like, oh, you should do life coaching, you should be a life coach. And it was years before I'd even left corporate space to become a coach. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, imagine doing that, like in a good way. That could you actually do that? Could you make money? Could you do something that you love? Because I always thought like work was means to an end. You did work, nobody really loved their job. There was parts of it you liked, but, wished your life away, and you picked up your paycheck, and you should have been grateful for the fact you've got a job. So I never realised, and I didn't know anyone. There was no one in my sort of network, friendships, even sort of network from corporate spaces that actually had their own business doing it. So I had never really seen it being done. But when I started to sort of dive into social media, and I'm going back to like 2016, 2017, before Instagram was what it is now, and TikTok wasn't even there then, there was a lot more genuine sort of space there for people who weren't always just selling a lifestyle. And so when I started to see there was evidence of people that could do it, I started to think, well, is this possible? Could I bring my own unique flair into coaching and actually help people transform their lives? And when I could see that other people could do it, then I knew it was possible for me. But then came the journey of having the courage to step away from corporate, being a mum, having 2 very young children, a good income coming in, a big mortgage, cars, commitments, holidays, all of that lifestyle. I didn't want to let that go. I was very attached to, number one, I have a responsibility to other people. And number two, I liked my lifestyle. I liked being able to go on holiday. I liked having nice things. Thinking, oh my, like, how could I start again? And where do I even begin?
Yeah, I was similar but different in a lot of ways, because my crisis point really was a crisis point, and I had done exactly what you are advising not to do. Like I wasn't burnt out, but I was definitely on the ledge of that. So I quit my job, sold my house and all of my stuff, and I'd left with a backpack and kind of headed off, and I had abandoned coaching. So I didn't actually have a huge amount of responsibility, which was a luxury and a privilege, but also quite scary to have a completely blank canvas. And at that stage, I didn't feel like I had to take a lot of time away from coaching and really kind of go deeper with my own kind of work before I eventually came back around to it. But I had those doubts and fears, like for sure, like you could see people who were doing it in the space, but there was that kind of like cynicism. And also when the old ways stop feeling right, you know that it's not right, but you know that it's familiar, and there's huge safety in that. Like, I have to say, like I worked as a business coach for a number of years at a large university, and I worked with entrepreneurs, and I saw firsthand the amount of work that went into a business. And I never really thought I wanted that, because it felt like responsibility. It felt like a lack of freedom. It felt like unpredictableness. Yeah. And I liked the safety cushion of a 9-to-5 where like they just give me my paycheck and then I would go away. So this was like a complete identity shift for me on so many levels. And yet somehow there was that sliver of hope of actually maybe there is more, or maybe there's a different way for the more courageous people who choose to channel that path and go against the grain. And it can feel lonely. And perhaps if you're listening to this, like maybe you see people doing this, but maybe people in your circle aren't doing that. Maybe a bit like me. And I don't know if you felt this, but I felt quite self-conscious about then going out and telling people, hey, I'm a coach. Like it would just make me feel uncomfortable, even though it was a huge passion. I felt really safe when that term was used in a corporate environment and it had that professional feel. But when it was so vulnerable, when it was me, Sarah Gregg, like presenting myself to the world, saying, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm passionate about. And actually the vulnerability of saying, and this is how I can help you. Like that imposter syndrome kind of came in. Yeah. There was a flurry of thoughts and fears and emotions around that. And I don't know if any of that was kind of similar for you, or if there was anything different that came up.
Yeah, and there was similarities, but certainly differences as well. I think when I thought about being a coach, it was at the same time as I was not feeling good about myself at all. I was burnt out, very, very burnt out, overwhelmed, loss of kind of who I am, you know, that identity. Like I would come home, I would look in the mirror and I'd feel sad. I would crying in the car before I got out the car, compose myself, get in the house, usually turn the laptop on again. And I just felt like I was never present. And I thought, I need to work on me. Like I knew deep down, again, I didn't realise how strong my intuition was with this, but I knew I was here to help people transform their lives. I knew I would be a great coach. I knew I was a great coach in the business and in the corporate space. I knew I was very good at that. I had evidence of that. I also knew that I could see beyond the words and the language that people were using. There was just a felt sense. I could really intuit for people, but I also knew that I had to sort out my own shit. I had to do my own work, and I hired a coach and I worked with her, but I did that alongside starting the business because, again, and we tell people this, do not wait until you are the perfect, polished, finished article, because that does not exist. We are human beings. There are multiple layers to us. We have layers and layers and layers. And actually, it only comes forward when it's ready to be worked. And so if you're waiting on that, you're going to be waiting a long time. But the beauty is, I actually did so much deep work very, very quickly. I realised that, wow, this is the work. It's the work of really working with the unconscious, really working with the parts that are holding us back, working deeply with intuition. And very quickly, I was able to alchemize that for myself, work on those parts. And I was so, like, it was like a calling to share that with others. It was like, Jill, you're here to share this with others. It's not about gatekeeping it. It's about doing it, embodying it, and then sharing it with the world. And that's what I did. And I loved the freedom. Okay, I didn't have the security. There was no pension anymore. There was no car allowance. But what it gave me is, like, I felt like a little kid again. Like I was like, oh, I get to do these things. I don't need to ask for permission for holidays. I remember one of my biggest aspirations was to go away and spend the summer in Italy and France with my kids. And that, if that was all I ever did, then I had won, and I did it. And I was like, wow. And not only did I do it, my business thrived. Why? Because I was happy. I was happy. I was a present mum. I got to do the things that really mattered to me. Prior to that, I didn't really know what I liked. I kind of knew parts of what I liked, but deep down, like I didn't really know what I was doing for me and what I really loved to do until I created that space to heal those parts of myself, to understand those parts of myself, and to understand how I could actually turn that sort of pain into purpose and show others how to do the same.
Yeah, I resonate with so much of what you're saying, you know, in a different way. And I think if I could go back, so to your point about like working deeper and like working with intuition, I think that was the thing that gave me confidence. So in the corporate space and in coaching traditionally, although I was accredited, it was very much working with the conscious mind. It was very action orientated. And I couldn't, in integrity, stand by that style of coaching that I was doing at that time. I was born out of the school of like Tony Robbins, you know, very much old school of like work harder, high performance, do more, action, you can do anything, which beautifully served its purpose for me. You know, that work inspired me to break free of the conditions from my childhood, from like the environment that I grew up in. It enabled me to believe in a better way. But I also became a victim of that because I ignored my shadows. I didn't go into the depths of anything. I didn't allow myself to be seen in my vulnerability and my unworthiness. I didn't even know I felt unworthy. If you go back to me in time and be like, actually, Sarah, the core of your issues is that you never feel good enough, I would have probably give you the fingers and, you know,
what are you talking about?
Giving you a lecture on exactly like why I, you know, did feel good enough and look at all of the things I've achieved with my external things. And I started my business around like, I think it was 2017. And I was doing the digital nomad kind of lifestyle then. And I was in Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand. And I rented an office space and I had a little room there. And I started to see clients, and I trained in neuro-linguistic programming. My background's in psychology. I was an accredited coach. I have read more books than I even care to admit. Like my whole life has been immersed in a lot of ways in personal development, and I started working with more depth, and I started to see the results, and I started to work at more depth with myself. And that kind of changed anything, because that I can stand behind, like that integrity I can get behind. But when that old system failed me, and perhaps you're an existing coach and you get this, like maybe you're not even new to coaching, but you're thinking, I coach in a particular way and that has served me and it's powerfully served my clients, but actually in integrity, I can't deliver those sessions in the way that I did before. I can't stand on stage. I can't work with a group environment and kind of know that this is it, because I know that there's more.
Totally. It has to be in the embodiment of what you talk about and what you practice and what you share. That's it. It is fundamentally what makes you exceptional at what you do. As you said, Sarah, and we've seen this a lot, you know, people can read the books, study the work, qualify in it, but being the embodiment of it is what gives you the real heart and soul. It gives you the real integrity and the confidence to go, I can hold this space, I can go deep here, I can hold this space for a client, I can stand on stage, I can talk about this without the fear. Of course, you still have nerves, right? Nerves are healthy, but it's not the same fear of, am I going to get called out here? Am I going to get called? Because that must be quite frightening for some people, right? And especially in this space now, and we've been in this space a long time, Sarah, we're seeing so much change coming through. People, clients are demanding more. They want more. People are getting and are much more curious about intuition and tapping into that and working with the unconscious mind. If you're not doing that, or you've not done that for yourself, you probably there's a right to feel a little bit nervous, because you will either hold back because you're the fear of, actually I can't hold this space, or you may be called out, and especially in this space where people are always calling each other out, right?
And I think there is a fear around that in general, like the fear of being called out, the fear of not being able to hold the space, the fear of, can I actually do this? Who am I to do this? And we certainly see this from our students who come forward. And I know that like being the embodiment, and that's why they're coached throughout their 6 months training.
Totally.
We put a huge focus on community for all of this. They work with unseen case studies because you need the confidence to do it. And I think when the old ways stop feeling right and you're looking for that answer and for someone to kind of like come in and just tell you, like, here's your 5-step plan, here's exactly what you need to do, here's the framework. And there are people out there selling it. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. Like, let's just say it is. And sometimes it's taking that step back and it's giving yourself permission to go on that journey and explore like who you are. So, you know, you talked about Italy and the more freedom that you had, you know, whenever I first started and I had all of these apprehensions about what this would look like and what does it really mean to like run a business. And when I started to take the pressure off and I allowed myself just to express and experiment like with different ways and things. So I had private clients that I worked with, but I also started writing, and I found that coaching kind of became this creative art form and expression, like something that wasn't confined into the corporate role and framework and someone else's policy and mission statement. It became this creative outlet, this art form that enabled me to, you know, secure 2 book deals. Like I published 2 books. I held a book launch event in New York City just like 6 months after starting my business. I had my first book deal. And then like, you know, 6 months after that, I was in New York at a sold out like book launch event, like 90,000 copies sold worldwide. Unbelievable. I never ever thought in my wildest dreams that would be possible. It was on my vision board and I would write about it. But I didn't associate coaching with the diverse profession that it is, speaking on stage, being paid to do keynote speeches, festivals, running group workshops. I used to come on and speak at your group programs, ran my own group programs, and it became this beautiful creative outlet. It felt like freedom when I originally thought that it was going to feel like I don't know, I had to be like a boss lady or something and like, you know, have Excel spreadsheets and have numbers and it all figured out, when it was none of that. Like, sure, there's pressure. Like there's pressure when you've got to generate your own income, and like we will not diminish that. But there's pressure in everything that we do. But when you counter that pressure with passion and purpose, it sees you through in a way that doesn't look like burnout.
I know. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned about it gets to be fun, you get to enjoy what you do, but so you should.
Yeah.
So you should. Like, why do we all buy into this narrative of it's got to be hard all the time? You know, it's this false narrative. And like you said, we're not diminishing that it doesn't require effort, but I would rather work at that level for something that is purpose driven for myself and for what we've created than for someone else to line their pocket and for me to go home a ball of stress at the end of the day. And actually we've made mistakes in business. Like we have absolutely followed that path of listening to people that are deemed as mentors and experts, only to find every single time it's never worked. Why? Because that's their projection of how they see the world, you know, 2.0, whatever. Like for us, it looks different for every individual because you're an individual. Your unique blueprint on this world is different to everyone else's. So what do you want your business to look and feel like? For us, like we have created a space where what was important, right? Okay, what's important for Sarah? What's important for Jill? Because if we are not living by that, we'll define success, because that's not success. If we are not living by our core values, what we love and who we love, then that isn't success. And we see this time and again. We interview people in the podcast. We speak to people. We have people that come through and train with us. And we see it in celebrities that have outward success, more money than you can imagine, more accolades than you can imagine, but deeply, deeply unhappy because there's such a disconnection to self. They are not living by their values. And actually, a lot of the time, they don't know what their values are. When you get really clear on what is important to you, what do you want life to look like? What are your non-negotiables? And then you build your business around that. Sarah mentioned it. The byproduct is flow, freedom, success. That is the byproduct. Like anytime we've taken space and trusted our intuition and lived by our values, as a byproduct, the business thrives. We thrive. People feel that energy. Our students, they walk the talk of what we share because they're looking up to us. Like we're out here bringing intuitive psychology into the world. We need to be the embodiment of what intuitive psychology represents. Therefore, the students that come through, they will mirror that. they'll do it in their way, and again, but they'll mirror what are your core values, what is important to you, what do you love to do, and finding what feels good that way.
And I think there's so much support that you find. So, you know, if you're on this journey, the start of the journey, something doesn't feel right within you, you kind of feel like there's something more, like more to life, more to you, and you've trodden that path of success, and you know, you maybe are resonating with some of the social conditionings that we've talked about, that feeling of it's not really possible, like life is always hard, it's too late, I can't do it. We want you to take this away and really know that it is possible, but it starts with you giving yourself permission. And our aim of this podcast, it's almost like a docu-series where we're going to go through each juncture of the journey so that you can hear and feel what it really looks like to tread that path, what it really feels like whenever you say, something else is going to have to shift. We want you to see the magic behind it. We want you to feel inspired, and we want you to feel seen, heard and understood, because your message matters, whatever that is for you. We want you to be able to bring your creative flair, your authenticity, the message that you have into the world. And we're going to start that process with the next episode. So tune in. We've got a very special guest. Ben Coomer is coming to join us, and we're going to be diving into the identities that we have to shed whenever we go on this journey. He's going to be sharing his vulnerable story. He's going to be talking about the various identities that he's shifted and shed along the way, you know, starting at private boarding school, then making that move kind of like at 18 to a weight loss journey, to becoming into the fitness industry, to now at this other critical point where he is really feeling empowered to go and work with men in a different way, and what that shift in identity in his own coaching business has looked like. So stay tuned. This is going to be the most beautiful series. We're going to bring all of our honesty, all of our vulnerability, and give you that space to really understand what it really means to become a coach.
Amazing. And we will see you all in the next episode.